Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a base for any investment decision, for solicitation or to buy or sell any security. Either the host, guests, or clients of either may own securities discussed on this podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, James Layfield. James is a serial entrepreneur and investor. He's a founder or co-founder of Never Ever Limited, Escape Airports, Black Box. And he's an ambassador for the Scale Up Institute. I actually invited James because Salesforce is acquiring Slack. James is also a co-founder of Clearfind.com, and Clearfind is a software management solution, and they have a database of 50,000 software products and across 800 software categories. And I think James will be able to help us get a lot better insight in why Salesforce is actually willing to shell out 30 billion here. Hi, James. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
How are you?
I'm actually very good today. Today has been a good day. Okay,
good to hear. Hey, I briefly introduced you already, but I'd love to hear more from you about all your adventures through the years, because you co-founded like an impressive list of companies. Could you tell us what you did before and how you became an entrepreneur?
Sure, yeah. So interestingly, my mum and dad worked for themselves. So in their own way, they were entrepreneurs. My mum had hairdressers and my dad used to fix cars. And so I almost came from a family of people who made money for themselves. And as I was growing up in Britain at the time, there was a very well-bearded man called Richard Branson, who was on the news every 5 minutes doing some sort of adventure with his ventures under the Virgin brand. And it just really caught my imagination. And so I set off to try and echo and follow in his footsteps. The nice thing about it is, on that journey, whilst I started out initially in advertising, I very soon got to work for Branson. And so for a little while, I was one of his youngest ever managing directors. Evidently, from my grey hair, that is no longer true. I left Virgin in around 2005, and I've done many projects since then. But I think the thing I always try and do is, I suppose, find a pain point that I see in the world and then run after it to try and solve it as best as possible. So with businesses like the Escape Airports business, that was looking at the US airport market and just how awful US airports are. And with businesses like Central Working, we're looking at the need for people to work remotely. And this was, again, like over 10 years ago now, before anyone was doing co-working, before the word co-working existed. Though I could see from the work I've been doing in airport lounges how there was an opportunity there. And most recently, as you mentioned, Bram, I've been looking at software in businesses, the amount of waste that goes on, the amount of challenges that people have. And so it was something that I thought, actually, this is probably the most exciting and largest opportunity I've ever spotted, which is what happens when companies bring software into their organization, when that complexity expands, and how do you really help people to manage that in a sensible way so they're not wasting money, they're not wasting time, they've not got too many vendors. And that's how the idea for Clearfind started.
Right. And let's see, before we drill into the Salesforce and Slack specifically, could you maybe explain like what kind of data Clearfind is gathering and how that is unlocked for clients, and what your clients actually tend to use your platform for?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you, I'll go back in history a little bit, back to sort of the end of 2017. And one of the businesses I have is with a big bank called Barclays in the UK. And that business is trying to help them find technology and bring that technology into Barclays Bank globally. And it's been something that we have been working with them on for now nearly 8 years. It's a long-term, great relationship. What's been fascinating is just seeing how interesting and challenging it can be for organizations at scale to bring technology into their business, to bring software into their business. And so I got really fascinated by that. And I was reflecting back on how I'd seen that in my own businesses and how hard it has been and how complicated things become. And I was trying to sort of fathom out a way to solve this, to make it easier to bring in new technology and to make it easier to manage existing technology. And I came across my now business partner, Jocelyn, who'd also worked interestingly for a bank, for a BBVA, who'd seen the same thing from inside that bank. And so we got together and got noodling on this problem.
Banks are, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but banks are sort of notorious for having a lot of problems with renewing like software cycles, or right?
Absolutely, but I think what's fascinating is we found banks obviously have lots of challenges. They've got lots of regulation around them. They're obviously highly regulated business, lots of security concerns. But what we found, which was fascinating, is it doesn't just stop there. This is a industry-wide problem. It's a business problem because there isn't a single business out there that's not using software, and increasingly so. In fact, it's probably the third largest spend in most businesses is on software. And so we thought, well, hang on, surely Gartner, the world's biggest software research company, they must have cracked this problem. And so I remember one day, Joss and I nervously got on the phone with them and pretending to be a client. And we called them up and said, hey guys, we're looking for some information about a particular software. We just want to find out what the features of it are. And they said, oh, no problem. Let me put you on to one of our analysts. And so we got transferred to an analyst, and we said to the analyst, hey, can you help us? We're just looking to find some features of a particular software. And so, no problem. Let me put you on to one of our specialist analysts. And so we got through to this last person. And we said, hey, guess what? We're trying to find out the features of some software. And they're like, yeah, we don't know that. And we thought, oh my goodness, this is phenomenal. We've got the company that's most famous in the world for doing something, and they don't understand what the software actually does at all. So then we started calling around their competitors and other people in the field, getting increasingly excited as we realized feature data is not something that existed in the world before us. And it sounds like such an overclaim. So I'm sorry that it sounds like an overclaim, but it's actually the truth. No company bothered to look at feature data, and no company still bothers to look at feature data except for us. And we thought, well, how can you help someone really decide what software they need if you don't know what the software does? On what basis are you making your recommendations? And as we looked at the market, we saw the basis they make the recommendations on was purely sentiment. Think about your local restaurant, the local restaurant you go to. And if I said to you, Brahms, I don't know your area, but I want to find the best burger restaurant in town. And I look on Google or Yelp. I am guaranteed, if I look at it very simplistically, which is sentiment, to end up at McDonald's. It's got the most reviews, it's got the most 5 stars. It definitely, I'm sorry, McDonald's, is not the best burger restaurant in the world. So how is it possible to have the most reviews and the most 5 stars? Because sentiment doesn't help with more sophisticated things. It doesn't help with picking the best burger restaurant, and it cannot help with picking software. Just because I love using Slack doesn't mean to say that you will love using Slack. But if I know the features of Slack and what features I need, and you know the features of Slack and what features you need, we can decide, and our AI can decide if it's right for your business use. So that's where we started. And so what we know is, we know the features of the software. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of detailed features. We know the pricing of the software. We know the characteristics of the software. And so we look at 5 fundamental areas. The functionality, soft characteristics like industry-specific experience, customer support, hard characteristics like pricing, integrations, scaling potential. And this is evergreen data. So for the last 2 years, we've spent the time developing a unique methodology to find, assess, categorize, and then use this data. And we have it for the top 50,000 products in the world, which is pretty much every product in English in the world today. And obviously it's changing all the time with things like this happening, with things like companies like Salesforce acquiring companies like Slack. That completely changes the landscape and the feature matrix for a business like Salesforce. And that's, again, why I find this so exciting, because we can help inform really important, crucial, gigantic, multi-million-dollar business decisions with the feature data we now have.
Yeah, that sounds really great. But I'm actually not an expert at software evaluation or anything like that. I don't even invest very often in software businesses. So let's say when you're getting all those features, are they reported to you by the companies, or do you are you like inputting them all with a team, or how do you actually gather the data?
It's a great question. So it's one of those things that when you start doing something for the first time, you have to work out the methodology. And that's why it took us almost 2 years to crack. So what's fascinating is it's not information that's readily available on the websites of the companies, which is surprising, but it's somewhat understandable. It's also challenging because most companies use their own unique language to describe what they do. So I'm an Apple fan and I've got an iPhone, but iPhone doesn't have video calling, it's got FaceTime. Right. If you were, I don't know, if you had Zoom or you were a Google fan, then you'd have Meet. And if I went onto the website, it talks about Meet. And if I go to their website, it talks about FaceTime. Imagine that idea across all of the features. It's very hard. So one of the first things you have to do is create a common language, because they're already video calling. So you're then looking at how do video calling applications compare? How does Zoom and Teams and FaceTime compare across sectors? And there are ways of doing that. So we have a combination of remote researchers. We've had 130 remote researchers. We have a very sophisticated scraping methodology and a machine learning methodology. And so we go through a process of doing this research uniquely for ourselves. In addition to that, we have relationships with the vendors. So the vendors can tell us of new features, and we can then verify if that feature is a real feature or if it's just marketing nonsense. Because again, at the end of the day, all the vendors, all the software vendors in the world, they're out there to try and sell you on something. And so our job is to cut through the sales talk and get to the nitty-gritty facts of the features. And when you do that, you help people make better business decisions. But also what's great about it is we really help the vendors. How do we help the vendors? Because we can put them in touch with people who absolutely want to buy their product. No questions, because they know this product and my needs match. We're the only people that can do that right now. Everyone else in the market is saying, well, hey, this company over there loves this product, so you might love it too, which is just so arbitrary. It doesn't make any sense. And that's why we dug in on feature data.
Yeah, a few times I did look at like comparison sites or something like that. If they're like, if you clearly see that they're made by humans and they've actually researched that product, it's pretty good. But that doesn't seem so scalable. So this is interesting. Yeah. And I think if you have like such high quality data, that like AI solutions work a lot better.
100%.
And are you like implementing those a little bit like the Amazon recommendation engine? Should I think about it like that? So a customer has a certain set of software already, and does it work like, oh, then this is a fit, or you could get rid of things like this, and also based on other customers' data, or how does that work? I'm just curious.
The way it works best in two ways. The most powerful use of it is we can intake every piece of software you have in a matter of moments. We've got a number of integrations that plug into everything from accounting software. So we can plug into your accounting software. We can plug into your bank account. We can plug into your expenses software. We can plug into your ERP. And the system can pull from that everything that is a software. And we can recognize it because we have all the data. So we can recognize what you have, and then the system will make a list of what the software is you have, what categories it's in, how much you pay for it, when the renewals are, and you can even look at which teams are using the products. But whilst we're doing that, what it's really doing, which is so exciting, is it's looking at all the features of all of those tools. So just yesterday, we were working with a company, and they spend around $6 million a year on software, and they had quite a number of tools. Our system analyzed over 250,000 features. And by analyzing those features, it identified there were 21 products in their software system that they could potentially get rid of with a saving of $1.8 million. So that is a phenomenally powerful thing that, again, the human mind would really struggle to do. We had another example. We have a biotech company, and they were looking for some new software. So they have our tool, and they went into the tool and they started to express what it was they wanted in terms of the features. And what our tools said to them, you already have these capabilities inside your system right now. You don't need to buy a new product. So the guy was over the moon straight away. And so he called up the particular vendor that we'd identified and said, you already have this software, call them, you can use this software. And he called the vendor and said, hey, look, I need to do this particular thing. It was to do with help desks. And your software does it. Can you tell me how to use it? And the vendor said, oh no, it doesn't do that. And the guy said, well, no, I know it does. I've got this report here. So the vendor escalated it to a more senior member of the support team who came back on the phone and then said to them, yes, we do this and here's how you use it. And in that moment, the client said to us, we paid for their entire year's fee because you have a situation now where this guy doesn't have to buy a new product, doesn't have a security issue, doesn't have to manage a new vendor, and he's over the moon. So there, how our product can really be used.
Cool. So, and this sort of your story reminds me of the Bloomberg terminal.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's really a software product. Do you look at things like Bloomberg and Capital IQ, or is it is that like another category of software? Or?
That would be another category, but interestingly, our head of engineering used to work at Bloomberg, and that's where they came from. So a bizarre fact, yeah. But so no, what we're looking at really is software applications. So it could be, I mean, every software application from very specific laboratory management software to the most abstract dental CRM to the most specific accounting software for building companies. And everything in between. So like, for example, in our category of CRM, which obviously Salesforce dominates from a brand perspective, there are over 1,000 competitors in there, which again, most people don't realize there are over 1,000 CRM systems. They know Salesforce and they might know Zoho. We have them all. And we also have all the features on them. And that's why when you come to us to ask what you should be buying in CRM, for example, we don't just say Salesforce. We start to say, what do you need? And let's find the right software for you. And it may be Salesforce, it may not be.
Right. And so there is a big difference in software. Like some categories are like super differentiated with like a long tail of competitors, and others
100%.
are like totally dominated by 3 players or something.
Yeah, and even the ones that are completely dominated, there's often a long tail of super specialized.
Oh, there is.
So for example, in CRM, there's a company called Kite, and those guys have built a software system for VCs. And not just for VCs, but for corporate VCs. So people like Barclays, who might have an in-house VC, will use a system like Kite to manage it. What is it ultimately? It's a CRM system, just like Salesforce.
Right. Oh, and this may be a difficult question, but something like it's called Autodesk, the design software.
Yep.
Are you familiar? Like sometimes a big part of the decision is if you whether your people are trained in that solution.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
can you factor that in or?
Yeah, no. One of the softer factors we look at is the amount of training required, the amount of customization. All those things are in the system, and you can answer the questions in such a way that if you want a package like that requires a lot of training, great, it will help tailor those solutions to you. And if actually you want something that works out of the box, that you can use out of the box, it can tailor those solutions as well.
Cool. So I figured you had a lot of insight in the software, but it's really exciting. So out of curiosity, is Clearfind.com a Salesforce or Slack user?
Interesting. We use Zoho as our CRM. Sorry, Salesforce, and we use Slack. But yeah, we do use Slack a lot. Okay. What I think is, and I use Slack for many things, not just for Clearfind, but we do use it for Clearfind. Yeah,
and Slack rolled out like the Slack Connect feature, I think this summer or a little bit earlier. Yeah. Did you take that up quickly, or is that a big hit with you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it really is. I mean, it's made it possible, obviously, to have external suppliers and vendors on the platform. Has the thing that I think that really is, what's really exciting about that is the potential for that to impact email. If you think about really, obviously a closed loop system is great for internal communication, but as soon as you can bring in outside parties, you can start to compete with a product like email, which for many years everyone from Google to whomever have been trying to do. If you remember years ago, Google launched, I can't even remember what it's called now, but a massive hoo-ha. They launched this whole product that was meant to replace email. It just didn't work. It just didn't do it. It was too big a move. And that's why I think it's very interesting in terms of this opportunity for Salesforce. If you think about it, the big piece of the puzzle that Salesforce really hasn't got right now has to be communication tools. They just don't really have it. And as you'll know, I mean, look at what we're doing now. We're doing an interview. We're doing it on Zoom. Zoom's stock price has gone up. Zoom's usage has gone up. Interestingly, not surprisingly, Microsoft Teams has rocketed during this last 12 months' time. Why? Because everyone's now working remotely. And then you think about someone like Salesforce, who can't really capture that growth right now. Bring in a communication tool like Slack, and suddenly that's really exciting. You can start to do a lot more when you bring in that communication tool. Imagine also how you can talk to people through that medium. And I think that's one of the biggest potentials of this, bringing those two amazing brands together. Because let's not forget, Slack and Salesforce probably have a much more customer-friendly brand than something like Microsoft, who's been around a lot longer. And they can really start to leverage that to give people a more holistic solution.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. My sense is that the Microsoft brand has improved a lot under Nadella.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So my sense is that you think this makes a ton of sense to you. Like, it's great.
Yeah, I mean, the way we see it, so we've just put together like a feature grid. We're looking at it. So you've got in the grid Microsoft, Salesforce, Slack, and Google. And so if you look at communication as one of the core fundamental products, Teams is best in class across those three. You've got Slack for the Salesforce Slack combination, and you've got Meet, which is a pretty inferior product that Google have on the market. Teams have really lifted their game this year, adding lots more features, lots more functionality, and you've seen as a benefit of that, they have had massive adoption since April, really, of that product. Then you've got the CRM. Obviously, Microsoft have got Dynamics, and then Salesforce have got their CRM system, their market-leading CRM system that they're known for, and that is by far the best-in-class, best known. Google have no product in that market. Then you've got BI tools. Microsoft's got Power BI, Salesforce has got Tableau, Google's got Looker. In customer service, you've got Dynamics 365 with Microsoft and Service Cloud with Salesforce, but Google haven't got a competitor. In marketing, email marketing, you've got Dynamics 365 for Microsoft, and then you've got Marketing Cloud for Salesforce. Employee management, Dynamics Human Resources, Salesforce, Employee Cloud. None of these Google has right now. In automation tools, you've got 365 again. Salesforce have got Pardot. Google haven't got anything. And then where Salesforce currently really don't have anything is email, appointment scheduling, and video conferencing. And whilst email, I think, and this is what's great about this purchase, Slack can really fill that gap. As you say, now that they can do external communication, there is an opportunity for Salesforce and Slack to create a massive differentiation by getting rid of the concept of email. Appointment scheduling is a gap that they have, and they probably need to resolve that. And then video conferencing, my goodness, they are so far behind on that. And again, in this day and age, you can't really have a remote work tool that doesn't do that well. Yes, Slack has capabilities, but it is so limited. It doesn't even come close to Meet, which is rubbish. And it definitely doesn't scratch the surface of what Teams can do right now.
So if I hear you, this almost sounds like what you really advocate is that there's like an enterprise operating system that has everything. Okay, so you think it's really moving in that direction. And in my country, what I see, and I'm a small business owner. I'm like surrounded by small businesses in a working space where I'm at. And I see like WhatsApp used a lot. Now I know Facebook's got nothing, going for it, but that WhatsApp platform is pretty powerful. Mm-hmm. Can they build that into something, or is just a decade off?
I mean, Facebook have got a work product, a workspace product. It just doesn't do. It's just not really well adopted right now, and I'm sure they're looking at it. But I think it's more interesting from my point of view, and from our point of view, is just Google really don't seem to compete in this space. And obviously they've just rebranded their entire suite under a new brand. So it may be that they're now realizing there is a lot of money they're leaving on the table. But I think what's so exciting about this merger potentially is just, it really puts Salesforce Slack head to head with Microsoft. And it puts them in a really brilliant position to compete. And again, as I said, from our point of view, we don't think that the email piece that Microsoft have in Outlook is going to be the missing link if Salesforce and Slack really combine to enhance that communication tool that they have in Slack.
Right. And we've seen like quite a few software mergers over the years. I think things may have cooled down a little bit after the Google Fitbit acquisition, because there are now so many data concerns, and I don't think they're excited to have like huge mergers going on. How would you score this merger if you think about LinkedIn, Microsoft, like the Fitbit, Alphabet, on the spectrum from merger makes 0 sense to makes a lot of sense?
I mean, from our perspective, this is a brilliant move. I think it has the potential to transform the Salesforce business. It puts it into a completely new sector, an essential, a growing sector, which is that of remote working. And really, when you put these two now, Microsoft and Salesforce Slack, side by side, you have two phenomenal competitors, and sort of everyone else is left a little bit in the dust with this addition. So I think we think as a company, it's a brilliant strategic move for them.
Cool. And then what kind of things do you see that the combined companies could do that are like totally new, that they are not doing currently? Or
I mean, I think that's one of the things that I suppose forecasting that sort of thing is always a challenge. So again, from our data, it's not so easy to forecast what might happen there.
But that's like a completely fine answer, you know. If I'd rather have you say that than make it up.
I will say that then. And the only thing I will say though is, I think both the Salesforce Slack entity has to be thinking about video. It has to be. And I think that is a puzzle piece that needs to be fixed. And so the only thing I would predict is that needs to dial up. What's exciting about this from Salesforce's point of view is the Slack tool is into a lot of younger businesses that Salesforce may not currently have tentacles in. And so I think it brings in potentially many new potential customers. And so again, if you think about the brilliant marketplace that something like Salesforce has, and then you add to it this new audience, I think there's a real opportunity for growth there for both the businesses.
Yeah, so I can totally imagine that Slack can bring in a lot of customers, because I view it as a tool that's used by a lot of small businesses as well, and there are many more of them than like huge enterprises. Yeah, and that's right. Like Salesforce, to me, it has a little bit of a brand of being the expensive, does everything really, really well, but you have to pay for it. Yeah. And that's what small business avoid. And is it actually not true? Like,
no, I think our thought is that really, I mean, Salesforce should look to, I suppose, leverage Slack's audience and probably have a more simplified offering for that particular market. Obviously, Slack have got a really interesting client management features within their system, which helps you manage outside organizations like we talked about. That's something that then Salesforce can leverage. So those two can go in can really help each other, I think. And I think that's something that's very exciting. But I think Salesforce will have to produce like a light version of the product to really tap into that new audience that they're going to get through Slack.
Yeah, and my understanding from Slack is that Connect tool is actually fairly hard to build at scale. You're not really seeing that in the software landscape. Like,
that's right. I mean, it's a real USP for them for sure. It's fabulous.
Cool, it's, super interesting. And does the combination have other like unique selling points that you're not really seeing in your universe of?
I mean, no. I mean, like I sort of talked through that table in a way, it's not necessarily that suddenly Salesforce with Slack combined can do something that no one else in the market can do. Obviously, the Slack platform is we think best of breed. But what it really means is you've got two great market forces that can deal with enterprise and smaller businesses now in the Microsoft and Salesforce Slack teams. Those two can now offer end-to-end solutions for a business in a really holistic fashion.
Cool. And then like the big media story that's all over the place, and you already touched on it right at the beginning, is that now Salesforce is going after Microsoft, or maybe defending against Microsoft. It depends who you're asking. Yeah. It seems to make sense, but do you think it makes sense? Is there truth to that narrative?
I think it's the next obvious thing for Salesforce to do. I think it makes a lot of sense. As I said, so side by side, the only areas now with this addition that they don't have direct products to compete with something like a Microsoft would be the email, the appointment schedule, and the video conferencing. But I said, you can potentially, the email can be wiped out by Slack and the way that it lets you communicate with external teams. If that's done in the right way, then email becomes less and less useful as a go-to business tool. And I think that is phenomenally exciting. And then it's just a question of bolting on some way in which you can really effectively bring in appointment scheduling. What's beautiful about the Microsoft ecosystem is just the pure play integration between all their tools, the way you can move data between the tools, the way you can move information between the tools, from the simplest thing like the way you can appointment schedule, email, and Teams can come together, to obviously more sophisticated things that they're able to do because they have this entire suite. And I think that's where Salesforce will now be able to play a lot more.
Yeah, and something I thought about, because you talked about it earlier, is when Salesforce gets these smaller businesses and they have them earlier in their life cycle, and you already start to get all their data and how they work, and then maybe that transition into Salesforce becomes much easier or more powerful.
Yeah, I think it becomes more relevant. I mean, again, the Slack brand is highly relevant to sort of lower, smaller and mid-sized businesses. And I think this gently pulls the Salesforce brand to be more relevant for that audience. And at the end of the day, that's what people are trying to do. As you say, if you can bring someone into your ecosystem earlier and then retain them with a great suite of products, which obviously Microsoft try to do, and I think now Salesforce can do, then that is going to make a big long-term difference to the company.
Sure. And then how does this help specifically against like Google's and Alphabet's, because they have so many free stuff, right? Yeah, you have to, maybe not everything's free, but
yeah, I just think at the moment there are so many holes in the Google offering. They're just like CRM haven't really got products, customer service, email marketing, employee management, marketing automation. They just don't have tools there. They've got the BI tool in Looker. They've got an average, not so great product in Meet for communication. And then they've obviously got a best-in-class product in Gmail. But really the other pieces of that puzzle are just missing.
Right. And like in software as a service, like one of the most important things to your valuation is how much you churn customers. Yeah. So it's investors are thinking a lot about that. Both companies do very well, but do you think this merger helps them to bring that down further, or?
Yeah, I mean, our view will be this additional set of features combined with the Salesforce set of features will absolutely make it more compelling. Will make it stickier, if you will. So I am, and we are convinced that this is going to mean that you get people earlier and you retain them longer and can sell them more things. So for certain, I think this is going to be really positive in terms of that churn and those metrics.
Right. And do you, I'm not sure if you can, do I have any special insight in that because of your data, but like can Salesforce like raise its price a little bit if it integrates this well for the enterprise?
Yeah, again, that's not something that our data necessarily shows. It shows that it's a significant benefit in terms of the communication tools. I think it'll be interesting to see how they adapt the benefits that they have through Slack in terms of communication with the tools that they already have. That's going to be what's going to be really exciting. I think that can add value and therefore could charge a higher price.
Cool. So that helps a lot. Thank you. Um, so I think you helped me a great deal to understand this merger better. What are there like key topics that I'm not thinking about that I should be thinking about?
No, I don't think I don't necessarily think there's things that you haven't covered from our perspective in the way that we're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the thing that's interesting, as we've touched on, is that really this is definitely going to be a Microsoft and Salesforce Slack battle. It's not really a Google battle. They're just not in the running right now, and they need to make some acquisitions or develop quite a lot of new products in order to be there. I think this is a really positive thing for people who have either of those tools in Slack or Salesforce, and it really should open up both those ecosystems to create an even better, more compelling, more 360, more remote worker enabled set of tools.
Right. Well, yeah, I think, I know there are more facets of this merger, like the financials and things like that, but it's been great that a subject expert on like software features help me understand this a lot better. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and helping me think through this. If people want to check out Clearfind.com, they can go to clearfind.com, I suppose.
That's right. Yeah, we'd love them to. Also, happy to, if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, it's just James Layfield on LinkedIn. I'll reach out with any questions. I really enjoyed talking to you today. Hopefully, we have something really special with Clearfind. I think we're here to help people really understand their ecosystems and make a massive difference to the annual budget they're spending and potentially wasting on this stuff. And so we're very passionate about this topic.
Cool. So thank you very much. You're not a big Twitter user or...
No, not so much. Much more LinkedIn.
It keeps social media use down. Well, thank you very much, and have a nice evening. And all the listeners, thanks for listening.
Thanks again.
Please share, subscribe, follow. All these things help bring more shows. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.